So just as a quick note, in the last episode, I made the error of including my PAL functions and my on-key press methods inside of my while loop. And this is not very good because we don't actually need these to be inside the while loop because we don't need them to run continuously. So it's actually better to put these outside my while loop, okay? So I'm just going to select all this and I'm just going to cut this. I'm just going to paste it so that it's above, so that all this is above my while loop but not inside of it, okay? So in the last tutorial, I implemented PAL movement using key presses. In this tutorial, I'm going to move my ball and have it bounce off the top and bottom borders of my screen. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is to set the direction my ball will be facing at the start of my game. So to do this, I'm basically going to go up to the top of my program and I'm going to go to where I created my ball object, and here I'm basically going to say ball dot set heading, and inside parentheses I'm basically going to give it a number. I'm just basically going to give it 45 degrees, okay? And what this is basically going to do is it's going to angle the ball 45 degrees, or basically in the northeast direction, okay? And you will see in a sec what this will look like. So after setting the heading of my ball, I'm now going to actually move my ball. And to do so, I'm just going to go inside of my while loop. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my ball straight in the direction it's facing, okay? So I'm just going to go inside of here, and below where I say screen.update, I'm basically going to say ball.forward, and inside the parentheses I'm basically going to say 0.3, okay? Now you might have to play around with this number, but basically what this does here is every time this loop is run, my ball is going to move 0.3 pixels in its current direction, okay? So since my ball, like I said, was facing the northeast direction, when I run my program now, it will basically move 0.3 pixels basically continuously in that direction, okay? So now if I run my program, you'll see that that's what's happening here. My ball is moving in the northeast direction by 0.3 pixels every time my while loop runs. And this is basically what I want to do when my game starts. So now I managed to move my ball in a 45-degree direction. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make my ball bounce off in the opposite direction when it hits either the top or bottom edge of my screen. But before I do that, I actually need to figure out whether my ball is moving in the left or right direction. And this step is very crucial since it allows the ball to move in the correct direction once it actually bounces off the top or bottom edge of my screen. And in order to figure this out, I'm just going to go up to where I created my ball object, and under where I have all my properties for my ball, I'm basically going to create a variable called ball direction, okay? And I'm basically going to give it a default value of 1, okay? And basically whenever the ball is moving towards the right direction, I want this variable to have a value of 1, and whenever the ball is moving towards the left direction, I want this variable to have a value of -1, okay? Now in order to implement this automatic system, I'm basically going to go inside my while loop, okay? And I'm basically going to first create a comment saying get the ball direction, okay? And under here I'm basically going to create an if statement, okay? And an if statement is basically a structure within Python which allows you to perform different actions based on specific conditions. So for example, if the weather is hot, I'm going to wear a t-shirt with shorts. Otherwise, if the weather is cold, I'm going to wear a wind jacket with long pants. And here I basically created two conditions and perform different actions for each condition. And similarly, I can use the if statement to figure out whether the ball is facing the left direction or the right direction. And by figuring that out, I can set the value of ball direction to be either 1 or -1, depending on the condition. So in order to do this, I'm basically going to create my first condition. So I'm going to say if 90 is less than ball.heading, which is less than 270. Basically, if the current direction of the ball in degrees, or the angle which it's facing, is between 90 degrees and 270 degrees, so if the ball is facing the left side of my screen, I basically want to do something. And I want to set the value of ball direction to -1, okay? And now for my second condition, I'm just going to skip a line and make sure that my indentation is the same as the if line right here. And I'm basically going to say else. So basically, if my ball is facing a direction other than the left direction, so if it's facing the right side, I'm basically going to write a colon, and inside here, I'm going to set the ball direction, to 1, okay? So here, if my ball is facing the left direction, I'm going to set ball direction to -1, and here, if my ball is facing the right direction, I'm going to set ball direction to 1, okay? So now that I set ball direction to either 1 or -1 based on the condition, I'm now actually going to bounce the ball whenever it hits either the top or bottom border of my screen. And in order to do so, I first have to check to see whether the height of my ball is greater than the top border of my screen, meaning the ball has made contact with the top border of my screen. To do so, I basically have to come down here and create another if statement, okay? So I'm going to make sure that I'm within the same scope as my other lines, right? And I basically want to say if ball dot y coordinate is greater than 290. Now the reason why I say 290 is because well, before I tell you the reason, I first have to comment this out so I can actually run my program and explain to you. So I'm just going to run my program and explain to you why I said 290 here. So basically, my screen, as you know, is 600 pixels high, right? And my origin is at the center, okay? And so if that's the case, from my origin, the y coordinate at the top here is actually going to be 300, and the y coordinate down here is going to be -300 on the y-axis. But you can see that the number I have over here is slightly lower than 300, and the reason for that is because if I were to have this at exactly 300, when my ball would go up here and hit my border, it would actually go slightly off the screen. So that's why I check to see if the ball's y coordinate is slightly less than 300. Now, when the ball's y coordinate exceeds 290, I can just say ball dot right and then ball direction multiplied by 90. Okay, so to explain what this line does, I'm just going to open an image of my Pong game. And here, for example, let's say my ball is moving in the right direction and it hits the top border. Well, what I want to do in this case is I want to rotate the ball in the clockwise direction by 90 degrees, okay? So basically, I want to rotate my ball in the clockwise direction by the value of ball direction multiplied by 90. Okay, so since my ball is moving in the right direction, this means that ball direction is 1. So my ball is basically going to rotate the clockwise direction by 1 times 90 degrees. But what would happen if my ball is moving in the left direction? Well, if it's moving in the left direction, ball direction will be -1. So my ball will rotate in the clockwise direction by -1 times 90, which is basically -90 degrees. So my ball would basically move in the opposite direction as before. So now if I run my program, you'll see that since my ball is moving in the right direction, it's going to rotate by 90 degrees clockwise when it touches the top border here, as you just saw. And now let's do it with the ball moving towards the left. But before I do that, I'm first going to set the angle of the ball so that it's heading in the left direction when the game starts. So I'm just going to go up to where I set my ball's heading, which is right here, and I'm simply going to change it to 135 degrees, okay? So now, if I run my program, you'll see that since my ball is moving in the left direction, it will rotate by 90 degrees in the counterclockwise direction when it touches the top border here, as you just saw. And that's exactly what we want. And now, I'm just going to set my ball's heading back to 45 degrees. So now that we implemented a bouncing system for when the ball hits the top border, we're now going to implement bouncing for when the ball hits the bottom border of our screen. And to do this, I can just come down here under the if statement that I previously created, and I could just say elif, which basically means otherwise if, and I'm just going to say ball dot y coordinate is less than -390. Excuse me, 290. Okay? And because of how my ball is sized, I obviously changed this number here to be a bit higher than -300 so that it will not go off the screen, just like I said before. So now that I created my condition, I basically want to rotate my ball away from my border once it reaches here, this position. And so in order to do this, we're just going to copy what I had here and making sure that I have 2 tabs in place just like before. So now, since my ball is moving upwards as opposed to downwards when it hits the bottom border, I actually need to rotate my ball in the counterclockwise direction instead, since I'm bouncing off in the opposite direction as opposed to before. And to do so, I simply need to change right here to left, okay? And this will basically ensure that my ball bounces off in the correct direction once it hits my bottom border down here. But I need to come up to where I created my ball object and actually change my ball set heading so that my ball moves towards the bottom border instead of moving towards the top border. So I'm just going to change 45 here to, let's say, 315, okay? And this will basically ensure that my ball goes towards the bottom, okay? And now if I test my program, you'll see that my ball bounces off in the correct direction once it hits the bottom border. And that's just awesome. But anyways, there you go. We just created a fully functioning bouncing system.